There's a soft orange glow coming from the light above you. It's dim but steady. It's very late at night.
No people to be seen.
This seaside town goes to bed early, and wakes up even earlier.
There's no one in town but you.
There is a single street that goes through town. It's a one-way street. You walk down the middle of it. All the stores are closed.
No one is around.
You move from the glow of one street light to another. Seen, then unseen.
No one watches you.
Soon you reach the ocean. You can't walk any further. You have to turn back. The street only goes one way.
There's no one here.
The steady orange glow above you changes, turning off and on faster and faster, till it's barely noticeable. The light brightens, its glow now harsh. The streetlight above you flickers and turns blue.
There's a statue of an old woman outside of the bookstore where she works. The statue sits on a bench, a little off to the side as if waiting for someone to sit next to her. Her hair is twisted in a neat bun, a few strands tucked behind her ear. She wears a warm cardigan, the stone carved perfectly to look like carefully done knitting. She has a book on her lap that she gently holds open with both hands. The stone pages are blank, but she looks down at them fondly, as if it's a book she has reread for years. The bench she sits on has its back to a tree, so during the fall, like then, leaves fall all around her. People are very nice to the statues in this town. Each statue has a nice thing that's done to it. For some it's knitted scarves and hats, others flowers. For the statue of the old woman outside of the girl's work, people brush off the leaves, especially the ones covering the pages of her book. She's always been there, at the street corner, right in front of the bookstore the girl works at. That is her home. She will always be there. She is made of stone. There was a statue of an old woman outside the girl's work, and one night in fall, the statue moved. Books about books, a sign reads. Small pamphlets of book reviews, book order catalogs for companies that no longer exist, in-depth analysis on books out of print. Shelves and shelves of them. Remnants of an era gone, a time when all information was written on paper. It's obvious why someone would want to get rid of these. They had none of the vintage charm of magazines, with pictures and articles, a look back at a different life. Or the relevance of newspapers, news and local gatherings, comics and advertisements, a look back on a different time. It wasn't so obvious why a used bookstore would take them in. Fill up valuable space in an already overstuffed store? What type of person would buy such a book? What type of person would even find this section in the first place? What type of person would actively seek it out? I cataloged to order sci-fi and fantasy books from a publisher that didn't even make it to the age of websites. Dozens of books are listed here. Some of the more hopeful had descriptions next to the other information. Most were just the title. The catalog is brought to the front of the store. The machine shows a number lower than what's written in pencil on the front page. Cash is given and then put into the machine. The door of the store opens. A book about books is read for the first time. Leaves were falling all over the old woman's statue, landing on her head, her shoulders, her feet, and especially on the pages of her book. It was late. The girl was dusting the shelves in front of the window. The statue was in perfect view. It was a weekday, too late and too cold for the people of this seaside town. Besides a few coffee shops and the grocery store, the bookstore was the only place open. There had only been the girl and her co-worker inside of the store for the last 2 hours. Dusty was busy work. Mostly, the girl was bored. A bookstore isn't like a library with endless books to scan and reshelve and tidy. A bookstore just needs to be kept clean and organized. However, with all the used bookstores around this town, a little dust probably didn't bother anyone. So while her coworker read a book behind the cash machine, she pretended to dust. If she had been home and free to do whatever she wanted, she wouldn't have found staring at the leaves blowing in the wind so enchanting. As it was, she couldn't look away. Tiny pointed leaves twirling in the wind as they fell to the ground, the bench, and on the statue of the old woman. There were so many around the base of the tree that she was surprised that there were still some attached to the branches. The girl felt like the leaves were putting on a show, one that went unseen except for her. Her, the only member of the audience, staring at them out the window. She had stopped dusting a long time ago, and found herself just staring out the window. She stood there for a long time. Enough time for the gray sky to turn to purple, then to black. She watched as all the street lights turned on, casting a dim orange glow on the falling leaves and the statue of the old woman. The statue looked more real somehow under that orange glow. It made her stone skin look soft, the swirling leaves disturbing the light just enough to give her an illusion of breathing. The wind must have started to slow because less and less leaves started to fly off the tree, the last of them slowly touching the ground. The girl's eye was caught by one of the leaves that seemed to dance around the old woman's head, barely brushing her cheek. Then it fluttered down, landing neatly in the middle of her book. It almost looked like the wind had placed it, like a bookmark. The streetlight above flickered, making the illusion of breathing more prominent. It flickered again, for longer this time, making it seem like her hand was moving along the page. And the light turned off completely, just for a second. The girl stared at her reflection in the window, frozen. Then the light turned back on, flickering slightly, casting a light blue glow. The light now contrasted less with the night around it. The girl found herself shook out of her dreamlike state from how out of place it was. She also started to pay more attention. She was staring at just the right spot to see the statue of the old woman move her hand and turn a page of her book. That's all the statue did. She just turned the page of her book, as casually as if she were a real person sitting outside in the park on a nice summer afternoon. But she wasn't a real person. She was made of stone. The girl dropped the rag she was using to wipe the shelves. It landed quietly on the floor. Her coworker didn't even notice as she moved towards the door until he heard the bell above it ring. She thought it must be a trick of the light, that strange blue light. The old woman was a statue. She was made of stone. When she got out, the street light had changed back to orange. Everything was as it should be. There was a statue of an old woman outside of her work. Messy bun, warm cardigan, book on her lap. She couldn't move. She was made of stone. Her coworker ran out of the door and asked her if everything was okay. She lied. The girl said she thought she saw a book that had been left on the bench and wanted to grab it before it blew away. He didn't look like he believed her, but he didn't press her for further explanation. There was clearly no danger. He said that they should go back inside, that they shouldn't leave the store unattended, even if there hadn't been anyone around in hours. Plus, it was cold. The girl followed him. He went right back to reading his book, but he did glance at her a few times as she went back to not dusting the shelves. The girl looked out the window again. All the leaves were being blown off the statue of the old woman now. Well, not all of them. Some seemed to be stuck to the pages of her book. The girl looked closer, her breath nearly fogging up the window in front of her. No, there weren't leaves stuck on the book. They were inside it, placed there, like a bookmark.
What's the book about, anyways?
The boy asked. The old woman beside him always had her nose in a book. Despite this, she was great to talk to.
Anything I want,
She said, not taking her eyes off the book.
As in, it could be any story?
The boy was confused.
No, it's always the same book.
Okay, so it's a really great book. So it's everything you want?
No, it's anything I want, not everything. Listen to my words.
I am.
The boy waited for the old woman to continue. He noticed she had started to read again.
But what exactly is it about?
He asked again.
Do you ever think about what the side characters think of the protagonist? We're always told stories from a protagonist's perspective, but you know that everyone's view is flawed and biased based on assumptions. Then, we take this protagonist's view as fact and then filter it through our own view, making it even more flawed and biased and based on assumptions.
A breeze disturbs the leaves above, making them dance around their heads. One lands perfectly between the pages of her book, like a bookmark.
I mean, sure, that makes sense.
The boy said, trying very hard for it to make sense.
So sometimes, when I read the book, I take everything the protagonist says as fact. But sometimes I believe that everything that they say is a lie, or that their story is actually being told by someone else, but from their perspective. Or every time they interact with another character, it's their perspective that's being shared, not the protagonist. So this book is about anything I want.
They both sat in silence as the old woman continued to read. The boy thinks he understands what the old woman is saying. Everyone had their own perspective, sure, that makes sense. But he still didn't know what the book was actually about. All the lights in the store are off, and the door is locked. Her coworker had said bye, and his car had already been out of sight for at least a minute. She stood in front of the doors to the bookstore she worked at. The statue of the old woman still sat on her bench, looking at her book. The leaves that had seemed to be stuck between the pages blew away. leaving the old woman with no leaves at all. The streetlight above her glowed orange. Soft, just enough to see by. Across the street was another streetlight, and down the road, and all over town, many, many soft glowing orange lights. The girl was scared to get closer to the old woman, to look at the book she was holding. What if the page was a different color than the rest of her? Like when you turn over a toy that's been in the sun too long. Or what if everything was perfectly normal? That she had imagined the whole thing? That she really believed that she saw a statue move? That she still believed that she had seen a statue move? Enough that she still stood in front of her work after her shift had ended. Enough that she waited in the cold fall night to see it again. Enough that she was sure if she left, not approach the statue and went home, it would rot in her brain for the rest of her life. So she stood, waiting, not wanting to be the one to make a move first. But she had to. She had to make the first move. The only move, really. A statue wasn't alive. It couldn't move. She started her slow descent down the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, sidewalk. The statue still sat, reading her book. The girl shook her head. The statue wasn't doing anything. The statue wasn't sitting, or reading, or looking. It was a piece of stone that was carved to look like a person doing those things. It was art, and it was really well made, but it just was. It couldn't do anything. The girl looked at the light above the statue. For a street light, it hung close to the ground. If she stood on the bench and jumped, she could have touched the light. It was artistic. The pole was painted green, the top was shaped like a turnover bowl, the light itself caged with the green metal bars. The streetlight was made to be nice to look at, a part of the town, rather than just something that was convenient to have. The girl stepped closer to the statue. The surface was smooth and polished. The light above reflects off of it. The old woman's statue sat on a bench, off to the side as if waiting for someone to sit beside her. The girl turned and sat at another bench opposite the statue, a sidewalk's worth of space between them. The girl stared as the statue did nothing. It couldn't do anything. The wind blew again, the leaves rustling. It made a fuzzy sound, like when you didn't put your headphone jack all the way in your phone. Quiet, but still distinctly there. She started to notice a different buzz, too. One that seemed to fill the whole space around her, the whole town even. But so quiet that if she hadn't already been listening, she didn't think she would have heard it at all. In her mind, the sound grew louder, making it impossible to sense anything else. She knew that that sound wasn't actually getting louder. It was just so unnatural in the usually silent night that she couldn't focus on anything else but where the buzzing was coming from. The light above her turned off, then on, then off, getting faster and faster until the flickering was just barely noticeable. Then, it turned blue. It circled the statue of the old woman, brighter and more distinct than the orange light. The line of light stopped just before her feet. She got the strange feeling that she was looking through something solid, like glass, that if she reached out her hand, there would be something to touch. She stepped through the light before she had really thought about what she was doing. She felt nothing as she went from the darkness of the night to the brightness of the street light. The statue of the old woman began to move once again, her hair fluttering in the wind, coming loose from her tight bun. The girl had been right. Her cardigan was knitted. It was just slightly fuzzy from long use and many washes. Her chest rose and fell slowly, slightly, but she was undeniably breathing. The girl watched for a few seconds from just inside the circle of light. The old woman delicately lifted her hand, carefully pinched a page of her book, and turned it over. An energy took over the girl, a need to do something, anything. She needed to know what was going on. The girl rushed towards the statue. She only got a few steps in when the buzzing became so loud that her vision turned black. Then silence. No sound at all. Not even a ringing in her ears. She was sitting on the ground. She didn't feel any pain, no bumps on her head either, almost as if she had sat down herself. She realized that she could see again at the same time that she noticed that there was no one on the bench in front of her. It felt abandoned. The bench was also no longer gray, but an off-white. The sidewalk beside her too, and the buildings, and the street. When the girl looked up, she saw that the sky was white as well. Little black dots sprinkled around. It was still clearly night, the whiteness not lighting anything at all. It was just the color. The street lights all down the street shone black, bright, illuminating the whiteness around it. It was hard to look at. Her mind rejected what she was seeing. The silence was suffocating. She had read once that people put in a soundproof room would start to hear their own heartbeat, or start hallucinating sound. Neither was happening. Maybe she was dead, and this is what the afterlife was like. A crude mirror world where everything was black and white and reversed. She placed her hand over her heart. Tap, tap, tap. Without the sound to accompany it, it felt more like knocking than beating. But it was beating. She let out a breath, feeling the air leave her lungs without the satisfaction of sound. She didn't feel better. She felt like the world had shifted to tilt 23 degrees in the other direction. She stayed sitting on the ground, noticing that the light around her was still tinted a little blue. The only color in the whole world. A flicker of movement. Off sync with the blue flickering light above her. She turned to get a better look, and a human head was peeking out from the side of a building on the other side of the street. Were it not for its huge wide eyes, she doesn't think she would have spotted it at all. Now that she was looking at it, it stood completely still, staring at her. Slowly, like someone was clicking through a video, frame by frame, its mouth widened. Huge and full of square, human teeth. She tried to yell, whether for help or to at least just hear something finally, she didn't know. All she felt was the air tearing her lungs and throat. The creature continued to grin.
Everybody thinks they're the one to get away. Everybody, oh, everybody thinks they're the one to get away.
The creature came closer, its body flickering, stuttering. Sometimes it would move so quickly that it seemed to teleport. Other times, it was like looking at each individual small movement like a slideshow. She needed to run. She needed to get away. But there was no guarantee that this place was like the place she knew. You may look it from the inside of the shine of this light, but how was she to know? The colors, or lack thereof, was already different. What if she moved to the light and there was no air? Or the streets turned into another town, one she didn't know? What if this light was the only way back? The creature was at the light now. She had hesitated too long. She was going to have to fight it. She braced herself, waiting for a hand to grab her, for square teeth to bite at her. But nothing happened. The creature stood right outside the ring of light, staring, flickering, grinning. It slowly brought a hand up. The girl braced herself anew. Then the creature placed its hand on the light, like it was glass, like there was a solid barrier between her and it. Was there? It's not like she had tried it herself. The creature continued to flicker. It was like a shadow, but 3D. In places there was even hints of clothes, but it was hard to tell where the body ended and the clothes began. The eyes, though. They had seemed big across the street, and this close they looked deep, deep enough to climb in and crawl through. And the teeth were worse. Big and many, the mouth much bigger than a person's, but still somehow looking so eerily human. Maybe this creature didn't mean her harm at all. What if it just wanted to escape? This light could be the way to save it. She just needed to pull the creature in. She lifted her hand and reached towards the creature's own. A hand grabbed her wrist. There was someone behind her. It squished her arm. It grabbed her shoulder, yanked her back, pulling her away from the edge of the light. It was taller than her. It turned her around to face it. It was a shadow as well, and it was in the light with her. She pulled her hand free. It didn't resist as much as she thought it would. Her arm flew back, knocking her off balance with her own momentum. Instinctively, she went to take a step back. The shadow in front of her grabbed her again, pulling her forward, throwing her to the ground. She landed on her knees hard. No sound, but she felt the scrape and crack. She looked up, raising her hands, ready to defend against another blow, but it didn't come. The shadow inside the light was looking at the creature outside it. The flickering was more prominent now. Its grinning flashed into a growl. The hand once nicely placed turned into a slamming fist. It moved in jerking and stuttering moves. It started to pace around the light. The shadow in the light watched it carefully for a few moments, then reached towards itself, its hand disappearing in its own darkness. The shadow became more clear as she realized what she was looking at. It was a coat. The shadow was looking for something inside its coat. She stood up slowly, watching the shadow as it pulled something out. The silhouette was immediately clear. A radio. An old radio. One with dials on the top and a long antennae, only considered portable because the alternative was a huge box that took up a whole end table. It looked heavy, but surely the shadow wasn't going to use this as a weapon. This can't be the only thing they had against this creature. The shadow then started turning dials. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise, the air around her easier to breathe. It was like going from the top of a mountain then suddenly down to sea level. The streetlight across the street went from shining bright darkness to turning off, to back on, faster and faster until it stuttered and flickered to blue. Then another turned on, then another. All the lights surrounding this creature were now blue, overlapping in many places. The creature moved rapidly in its glitchy way, trying to stay near but out of the light. As more and more of the lights turned on, the creature had less and less places to be. Till finally the lights all shone at once, leaving no place to the whiteness, and the creature vanished. The shadow in the light looked at her then, its shoulders more relaxed. It had white eyes too, and a white mouth, but they were smaller. They looked normal. It smiled at her, its eyes crinkling. It turned its attentions back to the radio, turning dials so the only blue light was the one they were under. She tried to speak then, to ask what had happened to it. Why had this shadow made sure that she stayed in the light? She stood up, and pain shot down her legs. If this shadow hadn't pulled her, she wouldn't have fallen. But she had been so close to the light. If she had regained her balance, her leg would have been out of the light. She felt a trickle and looked down at her knees. Red. Bright red dripped down from them. The fact that her knees were bleeding wasn't nearly as surprising how stark the color was. She couldn't tear her eyes from it. The world tipped and she fell on the bench across from the old woman's statue. The statue, now back in its place. Her eyes burned as they adjusted to the dark. The sky was black. No stars visible behind the clouds. Everything was back to shades of black and dark blue. Normal. Everything was normal. The light above her was still blue. "Are you okay?" She flinched. It was like someone had clapped right beside her ear. She could hear the wind in the trees, the buzz of the light, every rub of her clothes, the cars on the highway, the ocean. She slapped her hands on her ears. She could hear her own heartbeat fast and loud. Thump, 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 thump. She was glad she was already sitting. Someone stood in front of her, tall but with a round face. A teenager. A boy. Sorry, that was an unfair question. I should be asking if you think you need, like, medical attention. She just stared at him, hands still over her ears. The place is really weird, right? Kind of fascinating, though. I've been studying it for ages. Feels like the rules change sometimes, though, or maybe it's like how we as the human race know something exists, but we haven't seen it yet. But if we did see it, a lot of other things would fall into place, like actually seeing an atom. She was having a hard time keeping up, and she wasn't actually sure if she was supposed to be answering or if he was talking to fill the silence. Thank you, she finally managed to say, while the boy took a breath. Oh, you're welcome, but honestly, you should be thanking her. He thumbed to the statue behind him. She's the one that told me you were there. Kinda lucky I was close by. She can't really move far, you know. She did? She didn't know what he could possibly mean by that. The old woman statue. Whoa, I mean, I wouldn't call her that. Generally, I don't think people like being called old. It's a statue. The boy looked to the old woman, then back to her. Yeah? It can't... Well, I mean, it can't tell you anything. The boy raised an eyebrow. Then how do you think I found you? She stared at him. I don't know. For all I know, you could have been the one that sent me there. The boy sucked in a breath and smiled. Sitting next to the statue, arms across the back of the bench, perfectly at ease. What an interesting theory. Please tell me more about that. What do you think that place is? Why would I send you there just to take you out again? And why? He paused, placing his elbows on his knees, hands under his chin. Do you think I chose you? She shivered. I don't know. I'm cold and tired and I just want to go home. His shoulders slumped and he let out a sigh. Fine. I'm not keeping you here. She shivered again. It was much colder than it had been. How long has she been stuck in that place? She checked her phone. 9:03 p.m. She had locked the doors at 9. 3 minutes. It had been 3 minutes. She got up. So, what do I do now? She said. The boy looked at her, tilting his head. What do you mean? She wrapped her arms around her shoulder. She was shaking now. Like, can I really just go home? The boy closed his eyes and leaned his head back. If that's what you want to do. She stayed where she was. That seems... She paused, thinking of all the things she was jinxing with her next words. Anticlimactic? The boy stared at her for a second. Then his face cracked into a smile, then broke into a laugh, long and loud. Did you want to get hurt? He held up his hands, like he was surrendering. The pinky on his left hand was missing. His voice got serious. Trust me, those things would devour you in seconds. He got up and walked towards her. So, you can go home, pretend none of this ever happened, that you were daydreaming, or I told you a weird story, or whatever. And if you keep telling yourself that, and for long enough, you won't even be able to see me anymore. Then it will be even easier to pretend. Sorry, what do you mean not see you? The girl said. The boy ignored her. Or I can tell you everything I know, and we can research it together. She looked right at the boy's eyes. Normal now. Brown. Then his missing pinky. Then at the statue. Then finally at the street light. Still blue and flickering. She turned and started walking home, rubbing her arms. Hey, wait! She could hear him fumbling around in his coat pocket. Then low radio static. He must have turned on the radio again. Only this time she could hear it. The streetlight in front of her flickered, then turned blue. She stopped, not wanting to walk under it. Wait, hold on. The boy was in front of her. You're probably in shock. Sorry, here. He took off his lab coat and draped it on his arm. Then he took off his hoodie. It was a light blue. He handed it to her. You need to keep warm. She took it and put it on. There was no heat coming from it. So, well, he said. I'll see Bye. The blue light turned back to orange in front of her, and the boy was gone. She walked around the light, and the next light, and everyone after that. She tried to stay in the dark, even risking walking in the middle of the road in some parts. It was late. This seaside town went to bed early. There were no cars. It wasn't a long walk home. She kept telling herself what the boy said, that it was a dream. She had made it up. That the boy had made it up. That the boy didn't exist. That she had been bored. She was just telling herself stories to pass the time. Over and over and over, until even the less strange details of what happened started to feel not real. When she had gone to the door of her house, she had forgotten what the boy had looked like. And she thought, I guess I'll never see him again then. She opened the door, fiddling with the strings of the hoodie.
Two houses side by side. The road curves in front of them. Cookie-cutter houses on the road that follow the land. Unlike a grid system, the land leaves gaps. Cookie-cutter houses have to be the same. So the solution is gaps. Two houses side by side. The road in front of them curves, a gap the shape of a triangle between them. Two houses side by side. The fences around them are a perfect square. Between them is a triangle of grass, not belonging to either of them. Two houses side by side. The triangle of grass is green and shaded. If you were to push past the overgrown bushes at the back of it, you would end up on another road. The triangle of grass is in a small patch. There's enough room to throw a ball around, have a picnic, to run. The triangle of grass is not considered a park. If you didn't walk up to the houses, you wouldn't see the triangle at all. Two houses side by side. The road curves in front of them, a triangle of grass formed between them, owned by neither house. A single swing set sits in the middle of the grass. Rust creeps up the metal bars and on the chains. The rubber seat a lighter black on the top than the bottom. Two houses side by side. A girl swings on a swing set between them.
Blue Flickering Streetlight is written, edited, and performed by Karma Knight, and is produced by Lantern Zora. Intro and outro music is by Alexander Kordov. Logo is by Raccoon with a Spoon. Narrator 2 is voiced by Cakebird. The Statue of the Old Woman is voiced by Your Boy Trashy. The Boy Under Blue Light is voiced by Dodd. Everybody Thinks We're the One to Get Away is used with permission by Blue Jay Walker. All of their sounds are either recorded by Karma Knight or are from freesounds.org under Creative Commons. For updates, follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, or YouTube under Lantern Zora, Tumblr under Blue Flickering Streetlight, and Twitch and TikTok under Ultralight. Or visit our website, lanternzora.com. This is also where you'll find transcripts of episodes. All links in show notes. And thank you for listening.
Echo, Lima, India, Zulu, Alpha, Bravo, Echo, Tango, Hotel, Lima, Oscar, Victor, Echo, Sierra, Tango, Oscar, Romeo, Echo, Alpha, Delta,